Hey everyone, welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to be explaining the spinning top project, where our design goal is to design a 3D top to be 3D printed. The part that you physically spin, right, for the wooden top is going to be a wooden dowel. So it's going to be printed something like this, and then you see that center hole right where my mouse is. That's where a wooden dowel is going to go in. That way you could spin it yourself. So specifications. You're going to name it your period number. First name, last initial, and then spinning top. It has to fit inside a 1.5 inch box. You're going to be designing it upside down, and we'll explain why in a little bit. The top face should be flat-ish, right? It's going to look something like this. The bottom is going to be a point. It's going to be roughly 1/8 of an inch circle. We're going to be using the wooden dowel, right, to help us spin it, but we have to include a hole for that. So we're going to include a 1/4 inch circle that's going to be centered on the top face, and we're going to remove it a 1/4 inch. Any bump outs or indents should have a profile that is at least 1/8 inch in all directions. That way it's not too small for the printers. The final project should not just be one solid piece of plastic. You should have some kind of design cut out or some kind of aesthetics to it instead of just a lame very basic top. You're not allowed to use like standard geometric shapes. Like I don't want just a cone, just a cylinder, just a cube, prism, or whatever. I want you to come up with some cool ideas to it. And then you have to use the revolve tool in your design. So in Onshape, I already created a new document. Period, first name, last initial, and then the title of the project. So to get started, I'm going to put a sketch, and I'm going to put it on the front plane. Okay, and I'm going to call it, well, front. Now, to keep us into proportion, right, I'm going to go construction, and I'm going to use the rectangle tool, just so I have kind of like guidelines for us, all right? Now, I'm going to dimension it, so the height, the maximum is 1.5, so I'm going to have the height being 1.5. Now, it has to fit in a 1.5 by 1.5 inch box. Right, so it has to be 1.5 this way and 1.5 this way. Now, since I'm revolving it, and revolve is essentially going to take whatever we make, and we're going to spin it around an axis, and we're going to be spinning around this axis here. So essentially, it's cutting it in half, similar to the mirror tool. So instead of it being able to be 1.5 inch this way, because it's going to double it, it has to be, you know, half of 1.5. So left and right, you're going to make it 3/4. Come on Onshape. Try that. Oh, there we go. That way, 0.75 plus 0.75 is, well, 1.5, right? So as long as my design fits inside this rectangle here, we'll be good to go. So what I'm going to do, again, mine's going to be very basic, right? So the bottom, that maximum it can be is 1.5, aka, which is going to be flipped over, right? So kind of like the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a regular line, and I'm going to go from the origin here, because I'm going to use the whole width that I'm allowed. And then I can change the height, right, to whatever I want. I'm going to go, I don't know why that came. I'm going to go the full height. So I want it to be the full height. And then the point, right, where our top is going to spin around. That can only be a certain dimension, okay? It's going to be 1/8 of an inch, but again, we have to do 1/2 of an eighth because we're going to revolve it. So 1/2 of an eighth is 1/16. And if it yells at me, it's because I locked something in. No big deal. We'll just Control Z it. We'll make it way longer than it has to be, and that looks like it's a slight angle. Way bigger than it has to be. And then go to dimension it, and we'll make it 1/16 of an inch. Okay, that way I know it has to be from there to there, because when it doubles, it's going to be 1/8. So what I'm going to do, and you can use either your line tool to create some kind of image that you want to reflect that way. You can use some arcs if you want, right? I can do a 3-part circle. I can do a 3-point arc to kind of get me started a little bit. I can use the spline tool, which is almost like the pen tool from Illustrator, if you remember, to kind of soften some stuff and have a couple of curves, right? And then I'll redo that for us. Whatever I do, right, it has to be closed. Now, very, very important, I can't have anything that's going to stick out past our construction lines because the revolve's not going to work. So everything has to be inside our construction lines. But let's just say, right, this is something that I like. I think it's going to be great. Okay, I'm going to confirm it. And then up here, revolve is right next to extrude. So I'm going to click revolve. And then here, there's two things that we need for revolve. So first of all, I'm going to put this the front. That way I'm talking to the front plane so I remember. I need the faces and sketch regions that I'm going to revolve, and then the axis I'm revolving it around. So pretty much what object am I trying to revolve? This, right? And you notice it has to be a closed shape, just like extrude. If it's not closed, I can't revolve it. So I clicked here because that's what I want to revolve. The axis I want is going to be right here. And now you see if I confirm it. There we go. Okay, now I don't like how the top is super, super, super rounded over. So maybe if I go back here, I click on the front. Right, maybe because I don't want this much of a curve, right? It's more rounded than what I want there. What I can do is I could trim just that part. Can go back, make it a little sharper, and now we'll be good to go. You need a point to spin along, so you need to make sure it's a point like that. And now we're in good shape, right? It's starting to look pretty good. But if you go back to the project sheet, right, you need a hole for the wooden dowel, and you need some kind of like design on the top as well. So if I go back, the first thing I'm going to do, again, I'm upside down on this, so it's going to be a little different than what you're used to, but that's okay. Okay, I'm going to sketch on here, and I'm going to call it dowel, D-O-W-E-L. I'm going to put a center circle, right, on our origin. That way I know it's dead center. Lock it in, and it needs to be 1/4 of an inch. Confirm it. I'm going to now extrude that circle, except I'm going to remove it. Call it dowel so I don't get confused. And I'm going to remove it 1/4 of an inch. So now I have my hole for my dowel, and then I want to add some cutouts. So again, I'm going to stay on the bottom. I'm going to sketch on the bottom plane. Okay, I'm going to make like little triangles. So let's go, we'll call them cutouts. I'm going to take my line tool. I'm going to keep it aligned here. You'll see why in a moment. And I'm going to make a little triangle. Now if I go ahead and dimension this, let's say I want to keep it, like 0.25. This one I'm going to keep 0.25. These are the sides of the triangle that I'm doing. And then I want to keep it from the center of it. Let's just say I want to do 0.25, 0.25 just to keep it, you know, decently organized and fairly simple. Now I'm going to use the pattern tool, which we already used for a previous project. But if I click pattern tool, I can also do a circular pattern, where it's the exact same thing as the linear pattern, except now, if I do it right, I'm going to select all three. It's going to be circled around, and then I can determine, right, how many I want. So right now it has 3. Let's see if I put in 5, and it spaces them out. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I click. Then it magically patterns them around. Confirm it. Now I'm going to go to extrude, select my cutouts. And here's, I'm not sure where I'm going to remove them. I'm not sure where I'm going to have them go through. I actually kind of like that. What if I did 1.25? There. And I'm going to confirm that. Now I have my top that looks all kinds of decorative on it, which I kind of like. And I'm pretty happy with that. So once I make sure I check out the self-assessment, all that fun stuff, I have to change my appearance. I'm going to make it purple. I need to change my part name. Remember, make sure you name it everything that we have to, especially when we export it, all that fun stuff. But for now, spinning top. I'm going to rename my part studio. I'm going to create a drawing. Create drawing. We'll do 4 views. And then we'll do inches fractional. If I go to dimension it, I'm going to go from the bottom to the top for my length. Here I'm going to go, see if I can click. If it won't let me click, right, what I can do, let's see. Can typically find points. Sketch point. I'm going to add a point here. I'm going to add a point there. And then now if I go back and dimension it, I'm dimensioning those points. That's exactly what I want. And then same thing over here. I can go from the top to here. 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. Alright, I would double check over your project sheet. Make sure you self-assess, all that fun stuff. But that's how to get started. Alright, hope that helps. See you in the next video.